Welcome back, everybody, to Two Ball, Two Bold, episode 17, where we continue to talk about over and unders regarding the NFL divisions and conferences. I am Marshawn Parker.
And I'm Nathan Tomlin, and today this is the last episode we have of this before we get into other NFL topics. So today we're going to be discussing the AFC and NFC East, talking about the over-unders in terms of wins, the game to watch for every team, and then the player most likely to win an award for each team. So we will start with the AFC East, and they do play the NFC West, as well as the AFC South, plus 2 games against the AFC, other AFC teams in the other divisions that finish in the same ranking as they did in their division, and then the NFC North team of equal standing. So, like the other episodes, we're going to start from the top down based on last year's final standings. So, the AFC East champion last year was the Buffalo Bills. Their strength of schedule is tied for 6th hardest in the league at 516. Obviously, pretty tough schedule because the NFC West was pretty good last year. Obviously, 2 playoff teams plus the Seahawks were in it until the end. And then the NFC North team they have to play, of course, for the Bills will be the Lions. And then the AFC South, not the hardest division they have to play, but the AFC East should be a pretty interesting division as long as everyone can stay healthy. It's a big if. But for the Bills, their over-under is and this is a division that 3 teams have very similar over-unders, but the Bills actually opened as the favorites at a 10.5 over-under, which I was kind of surprised based on kind of some things that transpired with the team. And as I look at their schedule, I actually have them going under, believe it or not. And a big reason why is I don't think there's anyone out there that can say on paper the Bills got better. They lost a top wide receiver and Stephon Diggs, which needed to happen. I'm not opposed to that at all. They had to sell low because of everything that went on with Diggs, and everyone knew he wanted out. They only recouped a 4th round pick for him, which talent-wise, Stephon Diggs, I think, is worth more than that. He's had grumblings, it seems like, for about a year and a half or 2 years, I think, on the Bills. Comments made by Josh Allen saying, we don't miss him, which, of course, what are you supposed to say?
Yeah.
He's trying to say the right things, but they didn't really replace him, and they also lost Gabe Davis as well from the receiving corps. Now, I do like their tight ends. I think Buffalo's offense is going to look vastly different than it did last year. James Cook had a coming out party last year. He finished top 5 in the league in rushing yards, I think it was 3rd in running backs in yards from scrimmage. They drafted
Keon Coleman,
a running back too, and I'm blanking on the running back that they drafted. Ray Davis from Kentucky, who's had a very good college career in the SEC against some good teams, and he's more of a bruiser. He's a good complement to Cook. They did draft Keon Coleman. He is not going to replace Stephon Diggs. He is a more likelihood of replacing Gabe Davis's production. They have him slotted right now as the wide receiver 3, which I think he's going to start. Yeah. But I think they're going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets because I think Dalton Kincaid is going to lead their team actually in receptions. Probably not yards, but receptions. Dawson Knox, if he can stay healthy, is a very good tight end as well, very underrated. Their offensive line, I don't know if they ever got any better. Their defense got worse. They lost 3/4 of their starting secondary, which I understand Tre'Davious White was injured. So, you kind of already didn't have him anyway. But when he was on the field, talent-wise, he was elite. They're in a tough division, and a lot of it, again, does depend on the health of the quarterbacks of the other 2 teams that should be good. because both of them have an injury history, at least recently, and one guy's really old for a quarterback. They do get the one benefit I think that they do get of their schedule is the two probably best teams that they play were the two teams that played in the Super Bowl, Kansas City and San Francisco. They get both of them at home, and they get them both at home around a Week 12 bye. So they get Kansas City at home Week 11. They get a bye week, and then they're home for San Francisco. So they're pretty much home for 3 weeks. And they get 2 weeks to prepare for San Francisco. And it's a home game, and San Francisco does have to travel across the country. And then by that point, Week 13, it is colder weather. So weather may factor in, although the 49ers offense, as we've talked about, the 49ers, I think their offense will travel to cold weather because Christian McCaffrey is very good, and they do run the ball. 2 of their last 3 games are versus New England, and the other one is a home game against the Jets, which is huge. So they play New England. I think it's home against New England, then home against the Jets, then at New England. They could finish on a 3-game win streak, and so that could be huge because I do have them going 10-7 as the under. Okay, with 10.5. So I do still think that they're going to compete for a playoff spot. They could go over based on injuries to other teams. But if they stay healthy, I don't think that they're going to win more than 10 games. The game to watch, there's 2. One is against the nemesis, and it's Kansas City, and it's at home Week 11. And Buffalo they can't beat Kansas City. They just can't. They can't. That is the monster in the closet. I personally think Buffalo's championship window has closed. Josh Allen is now getting paid the massive contract, which makes it harder to build around. Once you have a quarterback making that kind of money, it's harder to build. Now if they can rebuild like Kansas City and get cheap labor, right, rookie contracts, and guys on rookie contracts that are contributing at a high level, that window can stay open. Josh Allen is still, I think he's 28. So a few more years. Now, he does have a lot of wear and tear because he runs the ball out. He had 15 rushing touchdowns last year. I do think one advantage is now that they're going to run the ball more, I think, this year with actual running backs. I do think that it's going to prolong him a little bit and do less wear and tear on his body. If he can sit back and say, I don't need to do as much, even though the receiving core is not as good, but take a little bit of a step back and say, hey, we're going to run the ball a little bit more. It's going to be quick passes. We're going to have to rely on defense, field position. We're not going to go out there and score 35, 40 points. It may benefit him. But that game against Kansas City is huge because they just can't beat him. And so obviously you want to see that. And then the other one is at home against the Jets because, bless you, that could be a huge game for the division, for playoff seeding, for just making the playoffs for both teams, being a Week 17. And it is at home. So it's a game that they should be favored to win. And then the player to win the award, it's Josh Allen for MVP. And I say that I don't think he's going to win it. But this is the year for him to win it. Because if they win this division and everyone stays healthy and he puts up good numbers, and I think for them to do this, he's going to have to limit his turnovers, which he's been turnover prone his whole career. He's going to have to limit his turnovers and be more efficient, I think, than he's ever been. And he's going to have to do that with less talent than he's had since his first 2 years in the league, which he made that big step in year 3 when they got Diggs, right? This is the year for Josh Allen to win the MVP because I do think a big reason Lamar Jackson won last year is not only were his numbers very good, but they also looked around and said, look at the talent around him. He had a bunch of guys injured. The other skill position players were not top notch for Baltimore last year because of injuries. Josh Allen doesn't have top-notch wide receivers this year. I mean, you're talking about their number 3 receiver is now their number 1. Okay, so you go from going against a slot corner or a third-best cornerback or a safety to the shutdown corner, which is Sauce Gardner twice, Jalen Ramsey twice, right? let's see you do it against these guys. It's a little different when you're in the slot versus going against a top corner. So this is a year for Josh Allen to win the MVP. So
give me the over and under again.
10.5.
I'm going over. So this is one of those things where it's not going to be rooted in statistics. There's two guys I've always compared Josh Allen to. Cam Newton and Brett Favre. He's got a little bit of the recklessness of Brett Favre in terms of throwing. He's got the big, strong arm. And then he's just a big physical specimen like Cam Newton. I never would have thought he would become not that he's the most accurate quarterback, but I never would have thought he would have reached this accuracy level, because watching him at Wyoming, he was a project. He was a total project. And for the first couple of years, I didn't get it. I didn't get it at all. I didn't think he was a very good quarterback until the last couple of years where I became a fan. I look at his situation with him losing Diggs in a similar situation as Brett Favre. Brett Favre was a good quarterback. He didn't really become Brett Favre, ironically, until he lost a guy who I believe me and you both believe should be in the Hall of Fame, Sterling Sharp. He really didn't take that jump until he lost Sterling Sharp, and then he had to start spreading the ball around. Josh Allen he's going to paint a Picasso this year. I'm not saying that they're going to go to the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that. What I see with them is 11. They may even surprise people with 12 wins. And people are going to say, what are they doing? Because they lost a lot of talent. They lost a lot of talent on offense and in defense. But they have two of my favorite young offensive players. I'm a big James Cook fan. I think he's amazing.
Go Dogs.
And it's not just because he went to Florida State. I promise you. I am a big Keon Coleman fan. I think he's going to be a very good receiver. I'm not saying he's going to be, their best receiver this year. I think long-term he's going to end up being a very, very good big target for Josh Allen. But I think Josh Allen is going to spread the ball around a lot. I love their tight ends. I agree with you where I think the tight end Dalton is going to lead the team in receptions. I think it's going to be one of those seasons where none of the receivers have over 850 yards, but the ball gets spread around a lot. James Cook is probably going to have a good 1,200 yards to maybe 1,350. Josh Allen, I believe he will cut down on turnovers this year, but I believe he'll be reckless enough to still be able to make some big plays. This is going to be get on my back year for him. And the division in itself, there's so many questions. As much as I love how explosive the Dolphins offense is, I don't know about Tua. And I don't know if I like when a quarterback loses a lot of weight. I get Tua did that to make himself quicker, and we'll get to the Dolphins later. There's questions about Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is 40 years old, right? He's a guaranteed slam dunk Hall of Famer. I mean, if he's not 40, he's 39. You might as well say 40.
No, he might be 41. Yeah, he's 40. Yeah. He's over 40. Yeah.
But we don't know. Listen, and we'll get to them later. But I mean, if he's out by week 3, would you be shocked? I wouldn't. I think that this division will allow for a guy, I'll bring them up just because they're in the division. But the Patriots are. I mean, look, they were willing to give $32 million a year to Brandon Ayuk, and he said, no, thank you. I think I'll just try to figure something else out. And he's still in negotiations with, other teams or maybe possibly the Niners himself. But $32 million was not going to allow him to be a Patriot. That's how bad of a shape they're in. Obviously, the game of the year with them is the Chiefs game, and I think they're going to win. Now, if the teams play in the playoffs, the Chiefs are going to beat them. So I'm going to make that very clear. if these teams meet in the playoffs, the Chiefs are going to win. But that game in the regular season, the Bills are going to win, and that game is going to solidify not who can win MVP, but who will be MVP, which is Josh Allen. He's going to be this year's MVP. You just write his name on there now. And then the two teams, the Bills and the Packers, I cannot give you 100% factual statistics or logic on why I believe what I believe about these two teams. It's just based on watching sports since I was 5 years old. Is what I just kind of feel in my bones about these two. And I think Josh Allen is going to have an amazing year. I think he's going to lead the Bills, like I said, to 11 or 12 wins. Look, they might still win. I mean, they might still lose their first playoff game. But I think he's going to have an awesome regular season, and they're going to overachieve and win the division, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. This division is very interesting. There's a lot of question marks in this division. It really is. So that takes us to the next team that does have some of those question marks, and that's Miami.
Yeah.
Over unders 9.5. Of course, they made the playoffs last year, and in the playoff game they had to play in like sub-zero temperature against Kansas City, and obviously with the offense, the way they play offense, speed does not translate to cold weather like that. They're over under 9.5. Their strength of schedule is tied for 24th at 488, and part of that again is you look at the AFC teams that they play. The AFC West team that they get to play is the Raiders. That's nice. The NFC North team that they get to play, that they do play, is Green Bay. I have them going over at 12-5, actually. And again, a lot of this is barring Tua being healthy. Their offense is explosive. Tyreek Hill is the biggest cheat code at wide receiver since Randy Moss. Different type of cheat code, right? And Jalen Waddle's extremely fast too. Like, people underestimate, you lose track of how quick and agile and fast Jalen Waddle is because Tyreek Hill's on the other side. But your number 2 corner guard, Jalen Waddle, is a mismatch for pretty much all other 31 teams. A number 2 corner trying to guard Jalen Waddle, right? The other big question, right? It's Tua's health, number 1. I love their running backs and the ability to play them both. I mean, A-Kane is going to come back to reality. He's not going to average 9 yards a touch for a whole year again. That's not realistic. Yeah. Obviously aided by that 70-point game against the Broncos where he had like 250 yards and 4 touchdowns on like 9 touches. Like, come on. That's maybe happened. And again, I don't know. I didn't look up the number on this, but that's probably happened less than 10 times in NFL history, especially from a running back, right? To put up numbers like that on that few touches. So he's going to come back down to earth a little bit, but averaging around 5 to 6 yards a touch is not unrealistic. He's extremely fast. They're getting the ball to him in space. McDaniel is a very good offensive coach. He's quirky. He's an interesting person, to put it as kindly as possible. I don't think I'd want to play for him. I feel like I don't think I could. But offensive mind wise, he's very innovative, and he gets his guys in position to succeed. He gets Tyreek Hill moving before the snap, which is why he is so successful. You have, in Kansas City, Andy Reid was more of a, hey, we're going to get the whole offense involved. So not everything was keyed on Tyreek Hill, where Miami's like, dude, we got this guy. We're going to find ways to get this guy. Either he's going to be open or you're going to think he's the guy. So you're going to send 3 guys to cover him, and Jalen Waddle's going to win one-on-one, right? Tua's not the best quarterback. I think they overpaid him, but I think he can be good enough with the weapons that they have if he can stay healthy. I think part of the losing weight was to make him more agile, a little bit more athletic. It might also help with knee and shoulder injuries too, when you get hit, right? Less weight going down and things like that. But listen, their first 5 games, their first 7 games, really, I could see them potentially being, by week 8, they have a bye in the middle somewhere in week like 6, I think, 6 or 7. I could see them being potentially 7-0 or 6-1 after 8 weeks. They start at home against Jacksonville. That's winnable. Yeah. They're at home against Buffalo on a Thursday. Thursday games are always weird, but they're also at home. Buffalo has to travel, so that's an advantage. They're at Seattle. That's winnable. They're home against Tennessee and then at New England. Those are 2 wins. They get a bye week. They're at Indy, so they do get 2 weeks to prepare for Anthony Richardson if he's still healthy. And then they do get Arizona at home, which is, I think, a win too. So they very well could be 6-1 or 7-0, right? And then the end of their schedule is the tough part. They finish 3 or 4 on the road. They're at Houston, home against 49ers, at Cleveland, and at the Jets. So that's where it gets a little bit difficult. But if they start 6-1 or 7-0, I mean, their over-under is 9.5. So let's say they start 6-1 even. You don't think they're going to go 4-6 in the other 10 games? I mean, I think that, again, as long as they're healthy, I think that's very realistic. The other question for them is their defense. Their defensive ends are hurt, right? Chubb and Phillips got season-ending injuries last year. I think Phillips will be ready to go for week 1. Chubb, I don't think, is going to be ready right away. But once they get back, man, I mean, they have good pass rushers. Jalen Ramsey's a good corner. You know, they have good pieces on that defense still. For me, the game to watch is week 9 at Buffalo. Because, again, that second week game, it's a Thursday game, short week. It's at home. Buffalo is going to be, you know, Josh Allen is still going to be figuring out whatever they're doing on offense, where Miami's hitting the ground running. That's why I think Miami's winning that game. Miami's already ready to go. Buffalo is, like I said, they're going to change their offense, I think. So week 9 at Buffalo is going to be huge. And then also potentially week 18 at the Jets. That's another game, again, if everyone stays healthy, that can determine division, wild card seeding, playoff seeding, making the playoffs or not. And then the player to win the award, I think, is obvious because he was on pace to do it until the end of the year, and that's Tyreek Hill as Offensive Player of the Year. If he keeps the pace that he had through the first, 10, 12 games last year, he's breaking the record for receiving yards in a season, shattering it. He'll be the first guy to 2,000. He set that as his goal. With the extra game, if there's someone that's going to do it, it's probably him. And obviously, if he does that, he would be Offensive Player of the Year guaranteed.
Yeah. They're an interesting team because they have 2 number 1 wide receivers. Jalen Waddle, I think people forget, before he got hurt at Alabama, he was probably pacing to win the Heisman. Mm-hmm. And then he gets hurt, and that offense was so potent. And, you know, not taking anything away from Devontae Smith because he's an amazing receiver. He ended up winning the Heisman that year. Waddle is a beast. I really like him. We've talked about Tyreek Hill. He's a Hall of Famer right now. He's so – imagine being a defensive coordinator and having a game plan for him. That's got to be stressful. I like their running backs. You know, I mean, obviously me being a Niner fan, I've seen Raheem Mostert a lot. I Jeff Wilson Jr. I can never pronounce his name right. Is it Achoy?
Akane? Devon Akane?
Yeah. He is really good. Yeah. He was even really good. I mean, he was a really good college running back. He's explosive. Like you said, I mean, he'll probably average 5 yards a carry. He's not averaging the 7. I think it was 7.7 or whatever he averaged last year.
It was over 9 yards a touch.
Yeah, but I'm talking about
as a running back. Yeah.
He's not doing that again.
Yeah.
He's not putting up, you know, averages that we only seen Barry Sanders at Oklahoma State do. But the offense is loaded. But what they remind me of, and I think that they're just destined to always be, is they're essentially that basketball team that, you know, averages 120, but then when they have to play somebody who's bigger and stronger, they just beat them up. Mm-hmm. They're going to go over, because I forgot to say that. They're going to go over. Mm-hmm. They're going to win 10 games. But I can't see, as good as their offense is. And Tua, the reason the weight thing bothers me with Tua is because so Lamar lost weight, and it's like, okay, we've seen him thinner and he's just quicker. Like we've seen him thinner and he's just a quicker, more agile player. And he can get away from you when he bulked up. So he's definitely going to be able to get away from guys when he's – Tua's never been able to get away from anybody. Tua was getting smoked and getting chased down.
Lamar has a better arm too.
He's got a better arm, but yeah, I mean, but I'm just saying,
And the weight won't hurt that as much for Lamar as it will for Tua, or could.
correct. I mean, Tua was getting chased down in the SEC. And that's not a knock because the SEC is the closest thing to the NFL, but it's not the NFL. So it doesn't matter if Tua weighs 170. He's still not getting away from guys. He wasn't getting away from guys in college. So look, I'm just a guy on a podcast, so what do I know? But I just don't see how losing weight is going to help. To me, it's just one of those things where it's like, dude, this seems like it's just going to be a bigger chance of getting hurt when this guy who now before would have outweighed you by 40 pounds now outweighs you by 55 pounds. That's just going to hurt even more because you're not getting away from them. You never got away from these guys. So I didn't understand that. And I like Tua. I like Tua as a man. So I root for him. It's just I don't know how good of a quarterback he is. And they're just always going to seem to be that team. They're the pretty team that just they play an ugly sport. Football's an ugly sport. Like as much as you look at the 49ers or teams of that nature, even another team that we're going to talk about later, and you look at these offenses and you think, oh, they're so pretty and sophisticated. No, the 49ers at the heart of it, they punch you in the face.
You know who it reminds me of when you say it like that?
Who?
The Broncos when they first signed Peyton. Remember? Now,
yeah.
Granted, that offense was better because Peyton Manning is light years better than Tua, but their offense was unstoppable until they met, one of the best defenses in NFL history, right? Yeah. And then you couple that with, I mean, everything that could go wrong went wrong in that game, but their front office said, okay, we see you. We're going to build the defense. And they come back 2 years later with one of the greatest defenses in NFL history and win. So, but sorry, a side note.
No,
that's
fine.
Me of that where
that's
it's like,
fine.
the offense is more fun to watch. And it can win you games, and it can even win you playoff games if it's good enough. But then when you do play against a team that does have an elite defense, or you run into freezing weather, speed doesn't translate that way. You're playing outside. You're not playing in a dome, where it can make a difference. Yeah.
The greatest teams, the greatest teams have always been able to, or the greatest offenses rather, is as much as they may have made splash plays and just been, pleasing to the eye, most of them at some point could have that 18, 22 play drive where they just rip your soul out. And the Dolphins just don't have that. That's not the style that they play. They are a arena team. They're an arena football team. That they're trying to really get up the field, chunk plays. And then when I look at the end of their schedule, whether all the teams they play or not, because some of the teams that they play, like for example, we talked about the Browns already. We both believe the Browns are going to underperform.
And it's in Cleveland. Cold.
Right? Unless yeah. So but what the Browns will do is they're going to beat them up.
Yeah. On offense too, especially if Chubb's healthy.
Oh, even like these teams on the back end of their schedule, the last, aside from the poor Patriots, the last 8 games of their schedule are teams, even though, look, the Raiders aren't going to be a very good team, but what the Raiders are, they're physical. So
yeah, they ain't gonna beat Miami.
Listen, would you be shocked if they do? I wouldn't.
Yeah. Because by that point, Aiden O'Connell's their quarterback. So yes, I would be.
Yeah, but you figure so
unless Tua is hurt. Unless Tua is hurt. I would be shocked.
If Tua is healthy, I'm not saying they're going to. I could see the Raiders being a physical team that in that game, Zeus has like 25 carries. They're getting the ball to the tight ends. They're playing ball control. Max Crosby is on the hunt. The linebackers are hitting. The corners are jamming the receivers up. Tyreek Hill has one of those weird games.
But you can't jam Tyreek Hill up because they move him pre-snap.
But have you seen some of the adjustments they've made to that rule?
Yes, but I still if you jam him up, that just means Tua's got to hold the ball for a tick longer. Because once Tyreek gets off the jam, he's faster than you.
Yeah,
And
I
that's
agree with that.
and that's what makes them to me makes them so tough
Yeah,
is yes, on defense you can be physical with them,
yeah.
but the speed is still
I
there.
listen. I
And I
agree.
don't
They
think the
probably
Raiders
have.
have the talent on the perimeter to be able to do that. It's going to take a team that's
I like.
got
I don't love. I like their corners. Um, I like their defense. And just for example, in that game again, you say a tick longer, a tick longer. Max Crosby is in the upper echelon of pass
Mhm,
rushers in this league. That might be all
absolutely.
it takes. So that's just an example of that game. They play the Jets twice at the back end of the schedule,
Mhm,
and I love the Jets defense. So just as an example, I mean, I'm picking them to go over. You know, I'm saying they're going to win 10 games.
mhm.
But I guess what I'm saying is people shouldn't have any grand ideas of like when you watch them and they have these games because they're going to have games where it's like, God, this offense is amazing. Especially if you're a fantasy football guy, you're going to look at them. You're going to look at all the points you're getting from the players you have on their team, and it's going to be thinking like, oh man, this team must be really, really good. I mean, I'm picking them to be over, but I would definitely, I don't think they're capable of winning more than 10 games. But 10 is still over, and in MVP, you know, I just don't think that nowadays you're capable of giving the MVP to anything other than a quarterback. So offensive player of the year, just like you, because Tyreek Hill, I mean, his floor to me this year is 1,900 yards. With that extra game, I just
If
think
he's,
this
I
year
mean,
he
he's
wants it
100
so
yards a
bad.
game, so I would say 1,700. But yeah, but it also depends on health of the quarterback, right? Depends, does he have more kids coming on the way? He's got to take some paternity leave. We don't know.
Hey, the more kids might make him want to hustle harder, man. That might be the extra boost he needs, man. He's got what 5 kids on the way or something like that.
Oh,
I think
God.
I just see Tyreek Hill before he retires, and I would say his best chance is either next year or the year after that.
Mhm.
He's going to break that record. He's going to break the
I agree.
receiving record, and because of that extra game, that's why I would give him the chance of saying
Mhm.
2,000 yards. Because before that extra game,
Yeah.
I didn't think anybody was capable of getting 2,000 yards
Well,
as a
you pretty
receiver.
much need 2,000 to break the record because what is it? It's like 1870 or
19,
something. Yeah.
I want to. It's 19. I think
Did Calvin get
1936 or something like
19?
that. Or you know what? Let me look that up. Give me a second because I'm
That's
pretty sure
high.
it's like 1936.
Cool. Well, while you're looking that up,
Yeah,
I'll go on to the Jets, who also have an over under of 9.5. And the Jets actually have a harder strength of schedule, believe it or not, tied for 12th at 505. Now, part of that's, of course, they get to play the Dolphins twice, but a better record than the Jets did. So some of that goes in there. But the NFC West team that or the NFC North team that they get to play is Minnesota. So you get the weakest team in the NFC North. And then the AFC West team that they get to play is they get the Broncos, right? And then the AFC South team that they get to play is in or they play the AFC South. The AFC North team that they play is Pittsburgh. So they arguably play the weakest teams or in those divisions for this year. But I have them go again. This all hinges on Aaron Rodgers, right?
yeah.
Um, Going over. I mean, they won. I think it was 7 games last year. They went 7-10 with I think their overall quarterbacks for the whole year. They were 31st out of 32 teams in QBR. I think the only team that was worse was, believe it or not, the Panthers. I think with Bryce Young, but one of the worst quarterbacks situations, right, of any team. Their first game is tough, and they're going to lose it. It's against San Francisco. Like when they made this schedule, what were they thinking? Like Aaron Rodgers, I don't think the Jets are even going to go out there and really be like, we're going to win. I think they're going to go out there and say, hey, we want Aaron Rodgers to throw 15 to 20 passes. They're all going to be quick. We don't want to put him in situations to get hit. We're going to hope our defense can hold up, and we're going to
Hmm.
work on running the football.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to do. Now, I give the Jets credit because what they did in the offseason, they traded for an offensive tackle and they drafted an offensive
Hmm.
tackle, right?
I love that.
So they're shoring up the offensive line, right? They have older offensive tackles, but they're older veterans with a veteran quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. But then they drafted a young one who's probably going to come in and play maybe next year even, right? But he's going to learn from two veteran, solid offensive tackles. Breece Hall is a stud at running back. Garrett Wilson is a stud at wide receiver.
Yes.
Their defense is loaded. They have very good defensive players at every level of their defense. Their defense was very good. Their defense was a playoff team last year.
Yes.
Right. And their offense, other than the quarterback, was a playoff team. Breece Hall is one of the best running backs in the league last year. Garrett Wilson is to put up the numbers he put up with the quarterback play he had, knowing that he was going to be the one getting the ball thrown to. Now you go from that to Aaron Rodgers. Garrett Wilson's going to see a huge jump in production and especially, again, in efficiency.
Yes.
But after the 49er game, I mean, they could potentially win the next four. They get at Tennessee, home against New England, home against Denver, and then they go to London to play Minnesota. So even though that first game against the 49ers, like I said, they're going to lose that. I think the 49ers are better anyway. And then we really don't know what to expect from Aaron Rodgers. After that, they're winning the next four. And so because of that, the game to watch for me is week 6 against Buffalo. Because to me, that is their first actual test. Because again, the 49er game, I don't think anyone expects them to win that. Because again, we don't really know what to expect. Then we'll have 4 games against teams that they, even with Zach Wilson at quarterback, they probably could win those next 4 games, right? Arguably. I mean, let's be honest, right? I do think they could, because their defense is superior, far superior. And Denver, New England, and Tennessee's offenses are not going to be great. So the defense is going to definitely shut those offenses down. And New England and Denver are going to be 2 of the worst offenses in the league with the situations they got going on. Minnesota may be an interesting offense, but their defense is terrible. Tennessee's not very good offensively or defensively either. So week 6 against Buffalo, it's at home. And again, I think that's the first real test for the Jets to see what the Jets actually are. Mm-hmm. And that's when, Aaron Rodgers, if he's still healthy at that point, will have played a third of the season.
Yes.
Aaron Rodgers will be in the swing of things. He'll have the chemistry with the teammates. We'll know what the Jets are at the end of that game. And it's at home. So, that's a game that they also kind of do need to win. And then the player to win the award is there can't be one more obvious. I'm going to throw 2 out there just to throw another guy's name. But Aaron Rodgers, comeback player of the year, right? I mean, if he comes back healthy, the Jets are probably making the playoffs, potentially winning the division. If they do that, he's a comeback player of the year. The other guy I'm just going to throw out there is Breece Hall for offensive player of the year, right? Because I do think his catches and his work in the passing game is going to decline. I think he had like 70 catches last year, something like that, because Aaron Rodgers is not a check down artist. He's not going to check the ball down to the running back, but he's going to average significantly more yards per carry if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, because you have to respect the pass. And so it's going to open up the field for him in the running game more. And I can see Breece Hall last year had, I think, over 1,500 total yards. I could see him going over 1,800 yards this year, total offense. And then depending on the touchdowns that he does get, that could vault him into consideration for that.
That's good. I like it. Now, let me go back to this really quick. So now Calvin Johnson was amazing.
That's 16 games.
1,964 yards.
Golly. In 16 games. Yeah, no, I mean.
Anyways. Give me their over and under again.
9.5.
I'm picking over. Because I think this is going to be, I think this division, everybody's going to eat on New England. So that's a couple wins for everybody. But Aaron Rodgers hinges on the fact of, is he going to play 15 games? Is he going to play 15 games? Because that's what I would say. He doesn't have to play every single game. Is he going to play at least 15 games? He can miss 2. I believe he can miss 2 just because they do have Tyrod Taylor. And I think Tyrod Taylor is capable of going
He's better than
one
Zach Wilson.
Yeah. Tyrod Taylor is capable of going 1-1 or even 2-0. Right.
Well,
So
that's what I mean.
if he
Those first 4 games there after 49ers with Tyrod Taylor, I still think they're better than those teams. You know what I mean?
Yes, I agree because
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people know how good Brees Hall is, especially because even though he's in a big market in New York.
Yes, they do, because he's the RB2 in fantasy football. So yes, people know how good he is.
Okay, when I say that, I'm not talking about fantasy players. I'm talking about just guys, just guys who watch football. That's what I mean. But I'll tell you who I like too. Just watch out for him. Watch out for Braylon Allen. He's the running back that they drafted out of Wisconsin. I think he's about 240, 235, 245, something like that. Big running back. He's only 20 years old. Started at Wisconsin at like 17. And he is a man. He is a grown man. And I think he complements Brees Hall's style very well. I'm not saying he's going to be rookie or anything like that. I think he's going to be a high-level contributor to the team. I think he's going to be able to, they're going to be able to make for a good duo. I really he was a guy I was hoping the Niners would draft, or at the very least that he ended up in a good situation. And I think he did end up in a good situation because I think
the Jets are going to run the ball, even with Aaron Rodgers. I think they want to keep under 25 passes a game, to be honest, because Aaron Rodgers will complete 70% of those.
I think especially because of Aaron Rodgers, because I think that they look at it this way: if we can get him to the end, if we can get towards the end of the regular season, I think they look at it with that defense, with the weapons they have. We've talked before. Garrett Wilson is so good. All of those Ohio State receivers, yeah, they haven't beat Michigan lately. Yeah, they've never won a national championship. Ohio State receivers are high-end NFL players, all of them. And I think if you notice, all of the Alabama receivers and all the Ohio State receivers, I think there's something about being in a room, a wide receiver room or a running back room, whatever it is. But right now we're sticking to wide receiver rooms where you're competing against other high-level guys. I think that helps in your development as much as who your quarterback is, as much as who you're playing against, the level. When you're competing every day in practice to be able to just keep your position against other high-end guys and learning little nuances from them, I think it just makes you a much better player. I even like their tight end. I think it's Jeremy Rucker, but I like him. And the thing with Aaron Rodgers is, if you're open, he loves his tight ends. If you're open, if you know the playbook, the one thing, Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady are the two guys. If you don't know what the heck you're doing, I don't know if there's, and Peyton Manning too, but those guys, if you don't know what you're doing, I don't know if there's anybody who just hates your guts more. It's like you got to know where you're supposed to be because they're very precise. They're very Aaron Rodgers does not want to throw interceptions at all.
Did you hear Pat McAfee talk about that? I was going to say Peyton Manning. Did you hear Pat McAfee talk about Austin Collie?
No,
as a rookie, he was like, he's feasting. He's like, and Peyton Manning sent him to the bench on a play. He reached up to catch a ball, and it wasn't a ball he was going to catch. He reached up with one hand to try and catch it.
Yeah.
And Peyton Manning pointed to the bench. And so he starts going to the bench, and Jim Caldwell was off in the corner at the time. So, what are you doing? Get back out there. You're in. And he said, no, I'm not. He said, yes, you are. And he turns around, and Peyton Manning's pointing at the bench. And he's like, don't. He told him, he's like, don't ever try to catch a pass with one hand. If you do that, you're not on. Get off the field. So when you said that, I was like, you better throw Peyton Manning in there too, because he's just not as animated as Brady and Rodgers about that stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, go on.
And then, like you said, one thing that really irritates me is when someone needs linemen, and they're like, we're going to get another receiver.
The Bengals.
We're going to get another running back. The tackle position is the third most important position on a football field. Actually, probably second, because
offensively it's second. Yeah.
No, I'm talking on the team.
Yeah.
Because because your quarterback is your number one position, and your edge rusher is number two, which obviously makes the reason left tackles make as much as they make or started making as much as they make is because of Lawrence Taylor and Chris Doman.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that they got Tyron Smith, who I hate to say it because he's a former Cowboy, but is borderline Hall of Famer, depending on how many more years he
but
plays.
yeah.
And then they drafted the kid. I can't remember where he's from, but they drafted they drafted a guy
From Penn State, I think.
There we go, from the guys. I knew it was a Big Ten school, and to solidify the offensive line, and then the defense.
And they traded for Morgan Moses too.
That's
Baltimore.
Mm-hmm. There we go. And because everybody talks about Sauce, and I'm going to talk about Sauce a little bit later. But Quinnen Williams, he just disrupts offenses. And he's so good. He's so good, but he's not like, a Warren Sapp type, or he doesn't have much personality, basically. He's not, I mean, look, nobody's Aaron Donald. I mean, God only makes one of those, right? But I even think Javon Kinlaw, who was the guy who underperformed for the Niners, I think he's going to be really good on the Jets. I think he needed to change his scenery. And I think he's going to be really good. I think C.J. Mosley still has more years left.
Was back with his defense. He was actually better under Saleh, wasn't he?
Yes.
He had better seasons.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But I like them. They're going to go. It's going to be over. I think they're going to be, a 10-win team. I think that team, that division is going to have 3 playoff teams. Obviously, awards. Again, I'm sorry, I forgot to do the game of the year. Forgive me. Game of the year to me is probably the second. It's probably the second Dolphin game.
Yeah, the last game of the year.
I'm sorry. Forgive me. I meant the first Dolphin game.
Okay.
Because I think they have a chance to sweep the Dolphins, depending on how they do against the Dolphins in Miami. So that's the reason why I say that, because that's going to be a very important game, determining where they fit into this whole playoff thing. Awards. Aaron Rodgers, I think he's got a great chance to comeback player of the year, although I think Burrow's going to probably win it. I think it's between those two guys. And I'm gonna throw one out at you. If they are more successful than both me and you believe they are, when you look at these awards, they're not always just about production. It's usually about storyline as well. Matter of fact, more than we want to admit it, storyline has a lot to do with the awards as well. And I look at a guy who is highly productive, who has a cool nickname, who's in a big market. And if he happens to get
Sauce.
Yeah. If he gets, let's say he has one of those years where, because he's been a shutdown corner. Well, this is the thing with it, is if he has been a shutdown corner since he's gotten the league. But when you look at his statistics, he doesn't have many interceptions.
Let's just say that much, yeah.
They don't. But let's just say, because when Deion won a defensive player of the year, even we talk about probably the best potentially defensive year anybody's ever had was Champ Bailey, who ended up having all those interceptions.
And how he didn't win it bublows my mind. But anyway.
And he barely got the ball thrown to him, right? So let's just say Sauce ends up with 5 interceptions and he returns 1 or 2 of them, with his reputation of being able to shut down the corner, shut down the one side of the field, and the Jets supersede expectations. He's got the cool nickname. He's got personality, all that kind of stuff. And again, that stuff plays in. People don't want to admit it, but it does. I can see him potentially being defensive player of the year.
Yeah. So we'll take about 3 minutes on New England. I don't have much to say on them. Their over-under is 4.5. They're going under.
Yeah.
The game to watch to me is Week 15 after the bye. It's at Arizona. That's probably Drake May's first game if they play him this year at all. That's when they'll play him. I don't think so. Reports are actually out that and I don't know if you watched that preseason game, that offensive line is scary bad. And they may actually go with Milton, who was the 5th round pick, I think, is where they drafted him out of Tennessee, who's just really athletic. And just for self-preservation purposes, they may play him instead of Drake May, but that would be it. There's no one that's going to win the award, but one guy that may put up numbers, and if none of the quarterbacks have a great year, for Offensive Rookie of the Year, Jalen Polk, he's going to be their number one. They just cut Juju. Jalen Polk is going to be their number one wide receiver. So even though they suck and they're terrible and they're going to lose every game, like his numbers might be pretty good to where he may get some traction for that. But that's it. That's all I say on New England.
So
they need to draft a left tackle with their number one pick next year, or trade it back to like third or fourth and draft the best left tackle. Whatever they need to draft their first 4 draft picks next year need to be offensive linemen.
Yeah, trade back, get more picks, and get a tackle. But I'll say this: this is my and I'm not saying this because I would have said this before the preseason game. This is my wild prediction with them. Okay. You may be old enough to remember this. You may not. Some of our viewers may. Heath Schuler, Gus Frerotte. What does that mean? I'm predicting Drake May is Heath Schuler. Joe Milton is Gus Frerotte. What does that mean? In 1990, I think it was 3 or 94. 94, I believe. The Redskins drafted Heath Schuler with the 3rd or 4th pick out of Tennessee. They drafted Gus Frerotte, I believe, out of Tulane or Tulsa, one of those 2 schools, in the 7th round. Gus Frerotte, by year 2, was their starting quarterback. I believe he made a single Pro Bowl. Most people, unfortunately, remember him because he had a good NFL career. Most people, unfortunately, remember him as the guy who ran for a touchdown and he headbutted the wall and injured himself. But he was a really good player. Not a really good. He was a good player. Heath Schuler, who's a good man, ended up being a pretty good, I think, politician or something along those lines. But I think Joe Milton is going to end up long-term being their quarterback over Drake May. Big arm, real toolsy, athletic. I think he's going to be the type of guy that, even though Drake May is extremely athletic and he's got a big arm too, I just see this being a situation where
Milton's about 3 years older.
He is. He's about 3 years older because Drake May is young. Drake May's
21. He just turned 21.
Yeah. Whereas Milton is a guy who started at Michigan and then
he's 24.
Yeah. I remember first hearing about him at Michigan as the next big guy. And it didn't work out. He went to Tennessee. And the thing about him is if he could put it together, he can be a really good quarterback. All the traits and tools are there. I wish he would have went to a team that had more say like he goes to – if he would have went to a team, say like the Dolphins or the Chiefs, something like that, a team where he could be coached up, I would have loved to have seen that, even though he wouldn't have got a chance to touch the field on the Chiefs, just he would have been coached up. But that's the only thing with them. And then the other thing is, look, they're going under. I don't. Who cares? Like, who wants to watch Patriots? But I will say this: if you have to watch a Patriot game, there's one player to focus on, and he's not going to win an award. But I just want to bring him up: Christian Gonzalez. I really, really hope that injury he suffered last year that put him out for the year doesn't have long-term effects.
He looked good the other day.
Christian Gonzalez will be a top 5 to 10 corner for the next, 6 to 7 years.
It's big for a corner too.
He is good. He is good. So yeah, that's it.
Cool. Well, we'll go over to the NFC East. They are playing the AFC North and the NFC South, and then the AFC South of equal standing. So the team that won the division last year, this is a division that has it had 2 playoff teams last year. So the team that won the division was Dallas. They're over under to start the season or start the offseason was 10.5. So go ahead. Oh, and their strength of schedule tied for 12th at 5.
We're talking about the Eagles, right?
Cowboys won the division.
Oh, they sure did. I was so ready to start with
The Eagles lost like 5 in a row. Remember?
yeah. After my Niners beat them up. So, and I'm not saying this because.
Yes, you are.
They're the Cowboys, and give me that over under again.
10.5.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. Okay, they're going under. They're going under. And it's funny because going into the offseason, Jerry Jones was like, we're going all in for next year. All this other stuff. I'm thinking, I got a little nervous when he said that. I was thinking, oh, man. I was like, they're going to mess around and get Derrick Henry. They're going to mess around and get
Nah,
a
man, they got
receiver.
Zeke.
I know, right? They got old Zeke. But they did not address the running back position. They did not. CeeDee Lamb is going to get like 180 targets this year. Like 200 targets. Like they're going to underperform. They might still, I mean, they're going to win going under, they're going to win 9 games. It's going to be a struggle fest to win those 9 games. And I think in actuality, I think the fact that I am saying that they can win 9 games, I think is a testament to Dak Prescott. I think it's a testament to Dak Prescott because I think that unless something drastically changes soon, I think he's going to play. He's going to play the contract out. And I don't know how many guys could actually. They have the gonads to just say, "Hey, I'm going to play this out," and still be professional about it. But I think he understands that if I just make it to the offseason, I'm going to make like $70 million a year. Like somebody's going to he's
on an
going
open
to
market.
be,
Oh God,
he's going to be the biggest, and people are going to hear this say, "What are you talking about?" He's going to be the biggest quarterback ever in the open market. Yes, Tom Brady was on the open market a couple years ago.
Peyton
Yes,
Manning, sir.
No, listen to me. No, you have to understand. This is why I say that. We knew Peyton Manning was at the end. We knew Tom Brady was at the end. Dak Prescott.
They both won Super Bowls after.
I get it. But I'm saying in terms of this, I'm talking about long-term investment. I'm not talking about best player. Because to me, Peyton Manning or Tom Brady don't even fit those. The best players to ever hit the open market was Reggie White and Deion Sanders. But
the quarterbacks usually don't get let go like that.
Well, that's the thing but Dak Prescott can play another 8 years. We've never seen a guy at this age hit the open market. So, he look, the Raiders will probably give him $70 million if they've got the money, just because they're the Raiders. They'll bid against themselves. But anyways, they're going to win 9 games. I think CeeDee Lamb. I mean, look, there is a disease of more thing when it comes to these contracts. It's the thing that makes me nervous about the 49ers season. I'm very nervous about Brandon Ayuk. I'm nervous about Trent Williams. I'm nervous that even if we give them the contract, this is going to be at a point where they haven't been training properly, things like that. Jerry Jones just came out and said, we don't, basically, long story short, we don't feel like we are in a rush to give him a contract, to which CeeDee Lamb, tweeted out LOL. You don't think that this is going to be an issue where your number one receiver, matter of fact, your only big time weapon on offense hasn't got paid. Your leading running back is a guy who prime was 3 years ago. No disrespect to Ezekiel Elliott, because he was a heck of a ball player at his prime.
Longer ago than that, I think.
I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Did I say 3 seasons ago? But Micah Parsons. I mean, look, Micah Parsons is expecting to get paid. Trey Diggs is coming back off of the injury. What is he going to look like? Hopefully, he still looks good. This is going to be an odd season, and I think they should have addressed the coaching after last season. I don't see why. How is Mike McCarthy back? How is he still the head coach? This is even the fact that I'm giving them 9 wins is an absolute testimony to Dak Prescott and how I think, even though I don't think he's the best quarterback, I think he's a top tier quarterback. But I think it's more about how much I respect his ability to be a leader, to be able to say what's right, to be able to be the face of a franchise, right? I'm giving him a lot of props here because everything else I think would spell out a disaster season. I'd say game of the year for them. Geez, I mean, game of the year for them is what did I pinpoint? I think I was looking at their first game on November 10th against the Eagles, because if the Eagles just blow them out, like it's just not a close game, which I think is possible. I'm talking about one of these
40 to 15 or something.
Yeah, where it's like it's really only 40 to 15 because Dak led some
He threw 200 yards in the fourth quarter because they were
yeah,
behind by 100 points. Yeah,
exactly that, and the Eagles just started running the rest of the game. If that happens, and we still have a situation where Dak didn't get paid, C didn't get paid, the media is already clamoring. They're talking about Mike McCarthy and will the Cowboys sign Bill Belichick next year or this and that and that, and they just get blown out in that game, it might get ugly. It might get ugly. So yeah, and then for awards, if the Cowboys happen to supersede my expectations, you got to say Dak Prescott for MVP because he's going to be he would be the reason why they have. And then Micah Parsons. If Micah Parsons has a season that I think he's capable, that his talent level says he's capable of, defensive player of the year. I just don't. Micah Parsons might be the most talented. I'm gonna say this. He might be. He's at the very least top 3 most talented defensive players in the league. But it doesn't seem like he strings them along. Like yes, he gets double teamed a lot and things like that. He's one of the most double teamed players in the league, but it doesn't seem like he strings enough games along for him to be the defensive MVP. But if he figures it out this year, he could definitely be.
Yeah. So, yeah, I have them. I have them going under 2 because 10.5 was high.
Yeah.
They're the good thing for them is if they're in position to potentially win the division or make the playoffs, they probably will because they finish at Carolina. They do get Tampa Bay at home. They're at Philly, and then they finish with Washington at home. So they'll probably be favored in all those games except for Philly. And then they do get out of their schedule. They do get Detroit, Baltimore, Cincinnati, and Houston. They do get at home. So they do get their hardest non-division teams at home. That does help. I'm with you. They didn't improve.
I thought for sure Derrick Henry was going to be a Cowboy this year.
I did too.
Yeah.
They didn't want to pay him apparently, and his contract was I think just 2 years, $16 million. It was Baltimore, and I think it was like 12 guaranteed or something like that. It's not even like it was a big contract, but
it made no
sense.
I
do like him on Baltimore better. I think that's a better fit.
Me too.
But they're interesting. I agree with you about Dak. I think Dak is a good quarterback. In some ways, I think he's underrated because he's a Cowboy and people like to talk smack on Dak. I think he's pretty good. I don't think he's, a top 2 or 3 quarterback in the league, but I think he's a good quarterback.
Yeah.
CeeDee Lamb is top 5 wide receiver in the league. He's going to put up stupid numbers. Why? Jerry Jones, if he's going to keep CeeDee Lamb, is now going to pay him an extra $5 million per year because he waited. Same thing with Dak. He's going to pay Dak an extra $5 to $10 million a year because he waited. And Michael Parsons is, when he gets that contract, he will be the highest paid defensive player at the time.
Yes.
Because every year, right? Every time somebody gets paid, they're the highest. And when he's up and he gets that contract, he will get it. The game to watch for me, there's 2 different ones. Because depending on how they start, week 8 at San Francisco is after a bye week.
Yeah.
And similar to you talking about against Philadelphia, I don't think they win that game, but how they play that game, I think will say a lot about the Cowboys. It's in the middle of the season. You do have 2 weeks to prepare. And if that's a close game, I think the Cowboys can feel good about their perspective going forward for the rest of the year. And it's right around that time with trade deadline and stuff, and it may affect if they make trades, whether buying or selling. Now, I don't think they'll sell unless they're just Dak got hurt or something like that, and their season is pretty much over because Jerry Jones won't do it. The other game is actually the second game against Philly, Week 17 at Philly, because I do think these are the two teams in this division that are going to compete for a playoff spot. And that game is going to be huge because that could determine who wins the division. It could determine who makes the playoffs. One team may not. Could determine seeding for either team because of because against a conference game with conference tiebreakers. And the player who win the award is obvious. It's Michael Parsons because he's the best player on that team.
Yes.
And he is one of the best defensive players. I think he's gotten a top 5 vote for defensive player of the year every year he's been in the league.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of the best. There's no question about it. The other guy would be, again, potentially Trayvon Diggs as comeback player of the year. He played 2 games. I think in the second game he played like 4 snaps or something like that, if I recall correctly. So, I agree with you. I think Burrow's going to win it because I think Burrow's going to have a big year. And offensive players, it's a little bit easier to get that award unless you die on the field and resurrect. But yeah, I mean, that's what I got for the Cowboys. I'm pretty much on par with your thinking too. They had opportunities to go over if they would have made the right adjustments. And I don't think they did. I didn't understand the McCarthy hiring from the get-go. I think I could coach this team and be 9-8. Honestly, I think they have enough talent to put somebody that has a basic knowledge of football, and I think that they'll be around 500 because they have enough talent. I think they need somebody that's a little bit more innovative at this point, or a defensive coach. So the next team is Philly. Their over-under is also 10.5. They were a wild card team last year, and their strength of schedule is tied for 21st at 491. So go ahead.
Yeah. I'll say this: I shouldn't have laughed just now what you said. I'm glad that he's alive.
No, I am too. I'm just
he didn't deserve that award.
He played like four snaps. Come on, Joe Flacco should have won it. My goodness.
Yeah.
But anyway,
but so I had a take on this, and I'm going to stick with the take on this, even though me listening to podcasts yesterday and the story about how basically the coach and the quarterback don't get along and don't see eye to eye made me hesitate on my take. But I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to stick with it because I think they hired Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator. And I think he's going to be the middle guy. He's going to be the mediator between the two. And it sounds like what the front office has told the coach is basically, hey, you're going to oversee everything. You're going to basically be the manager, right? And the coordinators are going to do their thing and kind of more associate. So I think the Eagles are going to be the number 1 seed in the NFC. They're going to go over. They're going to go over. I think that Saquon Barkley is going to be – he's going to lead the league in rushing, and he's going to be dynamic this year. And I think I've said this before, in one of our episodes where we're going to just kind of look at Saquon and say, oh, yeah, he was stuck on those – unfortunately, he was stuck on those Giant teams. He's really, really good. And they have 2 number 1 receivers. They have 2 high-end number 1 wide receivers. A.J. Brown is – now take this for what I'm saying. A.J. Brown he's always reminded me he's T.O. Jr. He reminds me of Terrell Owens. He's not Terrell Owens. He reminds me of Terrell Owens. He's great value Terrell Owens, which is still great, right? He's really
he might be better than that, man. I mean, give him time. I mean, Terrell Owens did it for longer, but He's off to
what is
a great career start, man.
he's okay? Yeah. So yeah, because when I say great value, people immediately think I'm trying to be funny. But what I'm trying to say is he is he's Terrell Owens light. You know,
Yeah.
he's a big, strong, physical wide receiver. Uh, I think I still can't believe they got him for what they got him for.
And then
Both
Tennessee went and gave them money.
it's see okay, really quick. Let me just rant for a moment. We talked about this before, and I talked about how the draft is a weird thing, and how some of these guys end up in poor organizations, and it's hard to really like. How do you trust the organization that makes decisions like that? It's that's the type of thing I talk about, where it's like these guys, when they take their own destiny in their own hands, people get mad at them. They're like, you need to trust the organization, and you shouldn't do this, and being disloyal. How did that team let him go when ultimately his contract is average at this point? But anyways, I digress.
Well,
Jalen
they
Hurts is
extended him, so now it's better. But yeah, I agree with you.
yeah. Jalen Hurts is he's a really good quarterback, but I think more important than anything, especially when you're in these places like Dallas or Philadelphia, I think you really have to, in the quarterback position in NFL in general, you have to be a leader of men. I think in some cases being a leader of men, as my bishop would say, being a man amongst men, right? And Jalen Hurts, he's not going to say anything that's going to cause controversy.
Mhm.
He's not going to do the wrong thing. He's going to be a good leader. He's tough. I think at this point he's proven that he's durable. He's a coach's son. I like everything about him, and it's funny because when I remember, and I know I'm going on a few tangents, just to kind of deal with me for a second. I remember watching him as a freshman play for Alabama against Clemson in the national championship game. And that year, I didn't get to watch a lot of Alabama, right? And I just remember people talking about Jalen Hurts, and he was freshman of the year and all this other stuff. And I remember watching him in that Clemson, and I was like, this guy can't complete a pass beyond 15, 20 yards. I'm like, this isn't a quarterback. His best chance in the NFL is running back, maybe wide receiver or something like that. But he's not a quarterback. And to see him build himself up by being benched, going to Oklahoma, building himself into what he's built himself now is a great success story. I like their defense. They're basically their farm system is UGA. Because I think half the team played for UGA.
They got 1, 2, 3, 4. As of right now, they have 4 listed starters
Yeah,
that went to UGA, and one of their
yeah,
top backups went to UGA, and none of them are in their 4th year in the league yet.
yeah.
Yeah.
I like their defense. I like their defensive line, defensive tackles,
Mhm.
especially. I think Jordan Davis is he's going to be a consistent Pro Bowler.
He is one of those guys that you have to watch him for the impact because he doesn't show
Yes,
in the stat sheet. He's one of those
no,
guys, like
yeah,
a Vince Wilfork type of player, right?
yeah,
Huge impact, but you don't see his name in the box score. You go a game without a
no,
tackle, but he made a bunch of plays. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm picking them to again go over. I think they're going to be the number one team in the NFC. So the playoffs, is going to go through them, and
That's bad
that
for your
game.
49ers if they got to go there, man. It's a tough
Uh,
place to play. It's a tough place to play.
it is the good thing is this: the way the Niners are developed now, I feel comfortable with them going anywhere.
No, but
They're
I'm
they're
just saying
they're
in terms of Philly, the fans like
yeah,
that
yeah,
city is a difficult place to play. It's not just a road game, not just that it's cold. Like that is
yeah,
the environment is different.
yeah. I agree with that. I do agree with that. Now the game to watch is on December 1st against the Ravens.
Hmm.
That's the game that, because I think that they have a chance. They win that game, they have a chance to end the season 6-0. And the physicality that's going to be displayed in that game is going to really show if they are in fact going to be the number one seed. Because I think that's going to be, God, that's going to be a physical game. That's going to be a hard hitting game. And yeah, I'm looking at the schedule and I'm looking at that game and I'm thinking, man, that's going to be a fun game to watch. That's going to be a really fun game to watch. Um, and then, MVP award, I mean, excuse me, awards. If, you know what, and I said Jordan Davis, who's really good. I actually meant Jalen Carter.
Jalen Carter, yeah. So they
That's
are running a
and
3-4 defense now. So he's playing
yeah,
like a JJ Watt style D end. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
And Jordan Davis is good, but I actually meant Jalen Carter. That's what I meant. Jalen Carter is
Jalen Carter's also very good. He's more of a
very
sack
good.
guy though.
He's
He
more of a
shows up
sack guy.
in the box
He,
score.
yeah, he does.
Yeah.
But as far as awards, if they're the number one seed in NFC, then you have to believe that Jalen Hurts is in the MVP race. Um, and then I think Saquon Barkley is going to definitely be in the Offensive Player of the Year. It's so sad that, like, because they're running back, we're just immediately like, Offensive Player of the Year. We know there's no chance for MVP, right? But
Well, look, I mean, Adrian Peterson, I think, was the last running back to win MVP. And
yeah,
he finished, what, 12 yards shy of the NFL record for rushing yards?
plus
And
it was a
Peyton Manning,
story.
but Peyton Manning threw, that was his first year on the Broncos. He threw like
Yeah,
48 touches, which at that time was like the third most in history.
yeah,
Right. That's the last
yeah.
time a running back won it. And yes, he came back from the
That's
injury
why
on
he
top
won
of
it.
that. He averaged 6.5 yards a carry or something stupid like that. But
They,
Minnesota wasn't any good.
they won. I think they won 10-6. They made the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean,
No, I
the
know,
Broncos,
I know.
were a significantly better team.
They were a juggernaut
They
that
went
year.
from Tim Tebow to Peyton Manning. And Peyton Manning had his best year of his career up to that point, statistically.
Yes, yeah.
Anyway,
Until
yeah,
the next year when he did even
2
better.
years. Yeah,
Yeah.
the next year, the next
Yeah.
year, because they went to the Super Bowl. The next year, he had the 55 touchdowns, which still
That
has not been even close to being touched. But anyway, go on.
he was nasty that year. But anyways, yeah. So you have to believe it, especially because Jalen Hurts. I think he's still going to run for a lot of touchdowns,
Mhm,
and I think he has a chance to have a better TD to interception ratio. I think this year, because I
mhm.
think that the offense is going to be
He had a
really
lot of
good.
turnovers last year.
Yeah, that's he's going. to I think he's going to. He had a lot of interceptions last year. I think he's
Mhm.
going to. I think that's going that TD interception ratio is going to be, more 3-1 this year. So if it's closer to 3-1, and he has double digit rushing touchdowns, which we know he's capable of doing. And then as much as I like DeAndre Swift, Saquon Barkley is a no
Mhm.
brainer upgrade.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's my take on the Eagles.
Yeah, I have them going over too. I mean, they're probably starting. They have an early bye week, and that's the only thing that gives you a little bit of a pause because you like the later bye weeks because you get a little banged up.
Yeah.
You're not too banged up in week 3. They have a week 4 bye, but they do start. They get Green Bay and Brazil on a Friday. I
Hmm.
still don't understand. That's weird. Then they get Atlanta at home on a Monday. That's Kirk Cousins' second game, right? And then after that, they're at New Orleans and at Tampa, which are 2 road games, sure, but they should win both of those. Then they have a bye week. Then they get Cleveland at home and then at the Giants. So they're very likely to start 6-0. Um, I have them going about 12-5. Um, they could go better as well. I mean, I think they could potentially win as many as 14 games.
Hmm.
Uh, a game to watch. I had the same thing week 13 at Baltimore because I think that game is Baltimore to me is them and the Chiefs are the two best teams in the AFC. I think I agree with you. I think the Eagles. I think it's the Eagles, Lions, and 49ers are the three best teams in the NFC.
Mm-hmm.
And home field is going to be very important because for Philly, you got to go all the way to Frisco or Frisco all the way to Philly. And then Detroit, of course, plays in a dome. So whoever gets that number one seed, that is huge.
Yes.
Not to mention you get the bye. And then the week 17 game against Baltimore is huge too because against Dallas is huge too because I think they'll have an opportunity to potentially knock Dallas out of the playoffs. And they're not sitting guys, even if they have the number one seed locked up by then, because you have one more week. So they're still going to play everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I forgot to correct you on the last episode when you talked about Devin White with Tampa Bay. He's actually on the Eagles now. Okay.
Oh.
Yes. No, the Eagles defense is stacked. They did lose Hassan Reddick, but they replaced him with Bryce Huff, who's not quite as good, but was cheaper. I think Nolan Smith Jr. now, he goes by at a UGA.
Yeah.
I think this year he comes on. Jalen Carr's going to have a better year. CJ Gardner-Johnson, I think, just got hurt. I don't know how bad the injury is, but the safeties, him and Blankenship at safeties are nasty. They still have big play Slay. And then they drafted, their first two draft picks were corners. So that was really their weakest position group last year was corner. They shored that up in the draft. Kaylee Ringo, who they drafted in, I think he was a 4th or 5th round pick last year out of UGA. He's a big corner. He does get beat deep sometimes, but in the right system, I think he can be very successful because he is a good corner.
Wait, really quick. How did I not know this?
I don't know. And when you said that, I was like, I don't think Devin White is on the Bucs. I couldn't remember who he signed with, so I forgot to correct you.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Levante David is still in Tampa Bay though, and he's like 100 years old, but he's still very productive.
He's still productive.
And then they drafted Jeremiah Trotter Jr. to back up Devin White too, which again they're running a 3-4 now, so he potentially could get some play. The big question to me is center. Cam Jurgens is now taking over for Kelsey, who is he probably won't be a first ballot Hall of Famer because offensive linemen rarely are, but he's on a very short list of centers that will be in the Hall of Fame once he's eligible. And it'll be pretty quickly, I think, within the first couple of years. And very likable person as well. And obviously now social media and everything, he's got the podcast with his brother.
That helps.
But he helped handpick Cam Jurgens. So he liked the kid, and he was an understudy for 2 years. So I think he'll be okay. I think it's going to be a pretty good transition, but that will be interesting because center is very important for line protection because they call out the line protections, right? But I do think Philly's going over. Player to win the award, I wrote down 3 different guys.
Mm-hmm.
Hurts obviously is MVP. It definitely has that potential. Barkley is Offensive Player of the Year as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did write down both Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean as Defensive Rookie of the Year. Look, they're going to have a pass rush. So those guys are going to get opportunities to pick off some passes. And like we saw last year, Deron Bland, right? Who's that guy? Right? He came out of nowhere, but he set the record for, pick sixes. I don't know if these guys are going to necessarily do that, but they could get 5-6 interceptions and be right there in that conversation. So, so the next team then that finished 3rd last year was the New York Giants. They're over under 6.5. Their strength of schedule is kind of in the mid, actually one of the harder ones, tied for 6th at 516. So go ahead.
It's going to be ugly. It's going to be ugly. This is the season where the Daniel Jones experience bottoms out.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a very frustrating season for a good young receiver prospect, Malik Neighbors. They're definitely going under. I think they have top 3 pick potential. I really believe that. I can't, I'm not going to pick a game of the year for them. And I mean, I guess, geez Louise, I guess you could say potential award rookie of the year potential is Malik Neighbors, but that I don't think he's going to be able to get the opportunity to produce to show himself valuable enough to be rookie of the year. I think after this season, it's going to be clean house for them. So yeah, they're going to be shopping for a new quarterback. They're going to be shopping for a whole bunch of new things after the season.
Dak Prescott. Look, they're going to be under. They're going to be under. Look, I do want to say this though. I don't think they're going to be top 3 pick, and here's why. Their defense is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
They got Brian Burns.
Yeah.
Right. So you look at their edge rushers. They have Brian Burns. They have Kayvon Thibodeau. They do have Azeez Ojulari, who had about 8.5 sacks his rookie year at UGA, was a second-round pick. He's not bad. Dexter Lawrence is one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league. Their secondary is not great, but they do have a good pass rush. Andrew Thomas.
Everything you said just means they lose 10-17.
No. I agree. They're not going to be good. I think Carolina's worse. I do think Denver's worse. I do think New England's worse because this defense, I think, can keep them in enough games to where the other question for them is the offensive line. Daniel Jones, he's not very good. Okay. That draft pick from the beginning was questionable because at the time they had 2 first-round picks that year. And everyone was like, look, if you liked him, you could have picked him with your second pick and picked a different playmaker, a defensive guy there instead, right? If you wanted to pick him, if he was the guy that you felt was the quarterback for you. And I think that's where the biggest kind of issue with it was. If you think you got the right quarterback, you got the right quarterback. No one had Daniel Jones on their radar for a top 10 or 15 pick. They could have picked him later. And I think that was where the biggest issue came from. But last year, their offensive line was god-awful, except for Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas is one of the best offensive tackles in the game. The rest of the line was terrible. Who's the other guy? They drafted an offensive lineman that really struggled last year, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Wide receivers, I mean, look, they drafted Jalen Hyatt, who had he's a guy that's deep threat, right? Malik Neighbors, I think, is going to be an elite receiver in the NFL. He's going to get the Garrett Wilson treatment for the first, at least this year, and then we'll see. Look, they went from Saquon Barkley to Devin Singletary. I mean, yeah.
Who's a good running back, but he's a good running back.
He is a running back by committee running back. I do watch out for Eric Gray, who went to, I think it was Oklahoma. He's in his second year this year. He had a good preseason game the other day. He is a tough runner. I think he's actually going to overtake Devin Singletary probably pretty quickly, especially if he can learn the pass protection. So that's the big thing with young running backs, right? Is the pass protection things. But Evan Neal, that's who it was out of Alabama. He was awful last year, and they drafted him top pick, right? You extended Daniel Jones and you franchise Saquon Barkley. So you're like, we got to get another tackle. You draft Evan Neal, and he was awful. He's got to bounce back. But yeah, the Giants are terrible. So game to watch, I actually put none too. It's funny you said that. I do have the one. If I had to pick one, it's at Philadelphia week 18. For the sole purpose of that game, Philly may be, to your point, Philly may be resting their guys. And the Giants may be in a situation where winning that game can be, or losing can be the difference between a top 5 pick and not. Right? So that'll be interesting because their backup quarterbacks, Tommy DeVito, he's not it. And Drew Lock, he's on his 3rd team already. He ain't it. There's no one that's going to win an award. So Brian Burns is their best player. If he gets 25 sacks, he'll win Defensive Player of the Year. So the next team then is Washington. Now they're a little bit more interesting, obviously. Their over-under is also 6.5. And their strength of schedule is tied for 16th at 502. So go ahead.
The thing with them is, how good is Jalen Daniels going to be?
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to be a really good fantasy player. I think he's going to, so if you could draft him and, he's going to score a lot of points there. They do have a lot of, I'm a big Scary Terry fan. I think he's a highly underrated receiver. I like him a lot. I like their defensive line. They have some pieces, but give me the over-under again, please.
6.5.
Yeah. Okay. Because I think they're going to go slightly under.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just, 6. I think they're going to win 6 games. So slightly under. This year, wins don't even matter for them this year.
Mm-hmm.
What matters is the development of Jalen Daniels, who every time I see him, I'm like, dude, you got to find a way to gain like 10, 15 pounds.
They said that about Lamar too, man.
But this is the thing, is I get it. I know Jalen Daniels won Heisman. He was on the explosive LSU offense, but there's a few differences between him and Lamar. Mm-hmm. And this is not a knock against him. This is just the reality. Jalen Daniels is a part of these quarterbacks who they transferred and they stuck around in college longer and they had more time to develop, and then they finally popped, right? And
he was pretty good on Arizona State. It's just that the team was bad, dude. That team
I get that. He was funny enough, that team had
Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk was
on that team, but you know who else was on that team? If I'm not mistaken, Ricky Pearsall.
Oh, before he transferred?
Yeah. That team, because you can say what you want to, but Herm Edwards, he recruited. They actually had some pretty good talent on that team. They weren't good. I think they won like 7 games. But
he was never a great coach. But
yeah, I mean, good coach, but not great. But he's a part of the quarterbacks. I'm interested to see, were they just in college long enough that then they started producing and they popped? Or was it that they were in college long enough to have a season where they popped, and then it's like, but they're not that guy? Mm-hmm. You get what I'm saying? Because some of these quarterbacks stayed in college a long time. And again, you gave the comparison. Lamar Jackson, yes, Lamar Jackson was thin, but there's never Lamar Jackson stepped on where he wasn't the best athlete. Mm-hmm. So it's like, he is a 1% of the 1% athletes. So you can't really compare even the body types, things like that. He's a different type of athlete. Nobody, I mean, we can probably count on one hand how many quarterbacks are, if you talk about athletic quarterbacks, how many quarterbacks are in the room with Lamar Jackson. So he's not there. He's not there. And he had three NFL wide receivers on that LSU team last year. So, and even though they were young, he had two guys as tackles who will be in the NFL. One of them will be a first-round pick. So, I don't know. I'm interested to see his development. I hope he turns out to be a good quarterback. I'm rooting for him, Mm-hmm. But this year will just be basically about his development. I mean, it's hard for me to pick a game to watch with them. I guess the game to watch with them could be. It's not going to be because of the season being on the line, but I guess the game to watch with them probably be, versus the Panthers. And then you get 2 young quarterbacks who we're interested to see what they look like. Will they be able to be the leaders of their team? Will they be able to be the, not just the QB of the present, but the QB of the future? That's about it. But they're gonna have a top 10 pick next year.
Yeah.
And nobody's gonna win an award on the team or anything like that. So yeah.
Yeah, so I have them going under 2. They don't have a bye until week 14. I actually, though, really love what they did in the offseason. So they drafted him first, right, in the
Yeah.
first pick, get a quarterback.
Mhm.
They drafted left tackle Brandon Coleman in the 3rd round
Mhm.
at TCU. He's projected to start. They signed a couple veterans, Zach Ertz and Austin Eckler, which I think is great because they're guys that are going to help Jaden Daniels develop. Austin Eckler understands pass protection assignments,
Yeah.
good pass catcher out of the backfield, good check down for him. Zach Ertz is an ultimate professional, right? Been in the league forever. Very good, still a good tight end. Understands the game. Is going to be a leader. They have good young receivers. You talked about Scary Terry. They have Dotson, who I think is very good too. They drafted Luke McCaffrey.
Like the last name, but I don't know how good he's going to be.
Christian McCaffrey's brother, Ed McCaffrey's younger
Out
son,
of Rice,
who is one of his sons. He had 3. His other one was a quarterback, I think, out of Rice, who
no, that is
is
the
actually
quarterback. He was the quarterback, and then he became a receiver.
yes, he became. That's right.
Yeah.
He actually, as a slot, he's listed right now as a starter, as their number 30 wide receiver. As a slot, he's got a good body type for that, and if he's tough like his dad, I think he'll be all right. And then defensively, this is probably not talked about enough. They signed Bobby Wagner, which is so interesting. I don't understand why Bobby Wagner went there, but I totally get.
Yeah.
I totally get why Washington did that because they also drafted in the 5th round Jordan McGee out of Temple, who, if you look at him on film and you look at his numbers in college, it was Temple. I get it. His numbers were off the charts. And if you look at it, actually watch his tape, you're like, there's some talent there. And you can learn from Bobby Wagner, who is a first, it's hard to say first ballot, but he is a Hall of Famer. He is one of the best middle linebackers of the, he took the torch from Kuechly and Willis and passed it on to Fred Warner and Roquan Smith, right? Like Bobby Wagner was that middle part between there. Still 2nd team All-Pro last year. I love that. So I think they're developing a culture there. And now they got a quarterback. They have 2 good receivers for him to start out. They drafted a tackle to grow with him. He's an athlete, obviously, which means that he does have an opportunity to win Offensive Rookie of the Year because I think his overall numbers may be better than Caleb Williams. If the Bears win, that will be the difference. I think Jaden Daniels will have better numbers. Maybe not straight passing, but he's going to have. If he stays healthy the whole year, I could see him having 800,000 rushing yards. To be honest, because I think he's still at the point in his development where he's still learning to read defenses, and he's going to tuck and run more than he necessarily needs to. Now, granted, in the NFL, he's not going to be faster than everybody on the field like he was in college. So as long as he gets down and protects himself, but I could see him having those crazy rushing numbers to be included with his passing. And the game to watch, I can't believe you didn't pick this one because you're talking about young teams. It's against the Bears, the 1 versus 2 pick, week 8. Right?
Oh.
I mean, the Bears and the Commanders is right in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
Right. So for Washington, it's their 8th game. I think for the Bears, it's their 7th game. Halfway through the year, you're going to really see these quarterbacks from the beginning of the year to this point. As long as they're both healthy and have played all the games, it's going to be interesting because we're going to see them both in the same game on the same field.
Yeah.
Obviously against in different situations. So it's hard to say, well, based on this game, one guy's better, but you could really see and say, hey man, like these are 2 guys that potentially are the future of the league at quarterback. Right.
I don't see
different styles. I understand what you're saying about Jaden Daniels. I know you're not as high, you're not high on him, but he is the number 2 pick. Yeah. So, we got to see, you got to give him a shot. Washington obviously felt that way about him. And this quarterback draft class was considered one of the deeper classes in a while in terms of just the pure depth. Obviously, Caleb Williams is like the best prospect I think since Luck, they were saying, but we'll see. And shout out Jaden Daniels, man, from San Bernardino, California, man.
Yeah.
Worked at old Best Buy 150 in San Bernardino. You know, a lot of good athletes come out of that area. But anyway, shout out to him from being from there. But yeah,
And I'll say
that's
this:
about it.
I can't believe I missed that. I can't believe I did not see that. That is by far the most interesting game there.
Yeah, that
I'll
game
say,
will probably be a game of the week just because if both
yeah,
the guys are playing, because you're trying to sell these guys for the future of the league.
yeah.
You're trying to sell them, you know.
But I'll say this: I think Caleb Williams is by far, like, it's not even close.
Oh, I'm not arguing
And
that.
I think this. Oh, we there?
I lost you for a second.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I think the second best quarterback is Penix. I'm not like, because I want all these guys to do well, but I don't see it with Jaden Daniels. I don't really even see it with Drake May. I think Caleb Williams is by far the best quarterback coming out of this draft. I think Penix is number 2, although the knee injuries scare me. But yeah, so I mean, hopefully they all do good. But you know, that's just how I see things.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in. That's it for episode 17. We'll see you next time with a little bit more NFL discussion.